Welcome to section 1.1.2. We're going to be working on this section in a couple of different parts. The first part is going to talk about how to use the calculators. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at using the TI as well as the Desmos online graphing calculator. Don't forget you can download an app on iOS and Android for Desmos, and I highly recommend if you don't have a calculator to do so. So we're going to begin with y equals the square root of x. So looking at the calculator, you want to go to first y equals, and that's at the very top of the calculator. And you're going to put the square root, so hit second. And you'll see that's going to look at the little blue letters above. So the square root and x is underneath the mode diagonal to the second. And I'm underneath the square root symbol. I'm going to get out of that. And now to graph this, we just hit graph just underneath the screen. And that's what the graph of y equals the square root of x looks like. Now, what's even nicer is it will give us a table of values. So if you see just above graph, it says table. To get to that, we hit second and the graph button, and that'll bring us up our table of values. So what we can do is we can use our arrow key here and go up and down. And we can look at all the different values. If you notice, when x is 0, we get 0. When when x is negative, we keep getting errors. And that's because we can't take the square root of a negative number. Now, I just want to take note of my whole number outputs. So going back to our graph, I'm going to write our table for x and y. So when x is 0, y is 0. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 4, y is 2. When x is 9, y is 3. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2, 9, 3. And we can draw our graph through those. And that's what our graph looks like. So for our domain is all of our input values. We can't use negatives, but we can use anything including 0. So we're going to have our domain be x is greater than or equal to 0. Those are all the input values we can use. Our range, our output values, our values for y, they're going to be greater than or equal to 0. We'll never have a negative output for this. Now our x minimum, our lowest value for x is 0. We can't use any negatives. Our x maximum, our highest value for x, it's just going to keep going and going and going further to the right. So our maximum value is actually infinity. Our y minimum is 0, and our y maximum is infinity. Just going to keep going up and up and up. Now, lastly, we need to talk about the intercepts, where the graph crosses the x-axis and where the graph crosses the y-axis. Now, our intercept, our x-intercept, it's crossing that x-axis at the origin at 0, 0. And that's the same for our y-intercept. Now, we can see the same thing, the same graph using Desmos. So here's what Desmos looks like. Now, to get to the variables, go to the keyboard, y equals, and then the square root of x. And what's nice is it types it exactly as you see it when you type on the paper. So now, there's our graph, but it also can show us our table. Now, to go to table, you want to hit that little gear, and then the table option, and it'll show you some values there. Now, if you want to see more values besides those, just type them in underneath. So if I want to see when x is 4, it gives us our output of 2. And we can just keep typing in different values there. So now let's go back to our graph, and let's look at problem number 2. Y equals 100, the square root of 100 minus x squared. So looking at the Texas Instrument first, so we want to go back to y equals. I'm going to clear that out using the clear button. And now we want to hit the square root, so second, and there's the square root, 100 minus, and notice how I'm still underneath that square root, and then it's going to be x, and you can use that squared option right there. No, I'm still underneath the square root. I want to get out of that, so I'm going to hit my arrow key over. And now to graph it, we'll hit the graph button. And that's what the graph of 100 minus x squared looks like. So we're going to go to our table, so hit second, and then get to the table. Now, as you can see, when we get to 11, we get to error. If you think 11 squared is 121, and 100 minus 121 is negative 21 when we can't take the square root of a negative. So we can kind of look at those values as we scroll up and down. And once we get past negative 10, we get into those errors as well. Once again, negative 11 squared is a positive 121. 100 minus 121 is negative 21, which we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So going back to our graph, here's our table. X and y. Negative 10, y is 0. Negative 8, y is 6. Negative 6, y is 8. X is 0, y is 10. And then when x is 6, we're at positive 8. When x is 8, we're at positive 6. And when x is 10, y is 0. So negative 10, 0. Negative 8, we're at 6. Negative 6, 8. 0, 10. 6, 8. 8, 6. And that. So it looks almost like half of a circle. Looks like a semicircle. And there's our graph. So our domain, all of our input values that we can use are between negative 10 and 10, including those values. So that's our domain. Our range is all the values between 0 and 10. So our range is another end inequality, 0, less than or equal to y, less than or equal to 10. Our minimum value for x is negative 10. Our maximum value for x is positive 10. And you can see that corresponds to our domain. You can see the lowest value is negative 10, the greatest value is positive 10. For our range, our minimum value for y, is 0, and our maximum value for y is 10. And that also corresponds to the range. So for our x-intercept, we have two of them. We have two places where across the x-axis, negative 10, 0, and positive 10, 0. And our y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is at 0, 10. Now, just showing you how to type this into the Desmos calculator. Scroll up. I'm going to get rid of that graph. I'm going to type in now here, y equals the square root of 100 minus x squared. And we'll have to kind of zoom out a little bit. And there's our graph. Once again, if you want to see the table, hit that gear, bring up the table. If you want to see other values, you'll have to just type them in at the bottom of your screen. Okay, we are going to stop this lesson here. Like I said, it mostly wanted to show you how to use the calculator. We're going to continue the rest of the graphs in the next video. Thank you.